They got devices now that'll cut the grass for you.
Yes, yes. They have basically a Roomba for your yard.
Man. All that technology, and we still can't get a good cell phone signal at Highway 290 in Fairfield. That's amazing.
Well, what happened to the good old days? We had a cup and a string, right?
Exactly. 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 Let's see.
Well, at least your ride home was good. The Stros won.
Yes, it was a success, and it was an early start, so I got home in a decent hour, and they
Mm-hmm.
won, so that was good. Uh, Luckily, the day before's game only counted as one loss since we lost by 150 runs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Morning, everyone.
Morning,
Good morning.
counselor. How are you?
Doing great. Did you go up to Boston to catch that Astros game?
I went to Boston last week. I got to sit in the owner's box for the Red Sox to watch us get swept,
Oh,
and then I went to last night's game too to watch a win. So overall, it was fine.
well, that's good. I'm glad last night went better.
Yes, very much so.
Well, the night before, I didn't know McCormick could pitch.
He didn't either. It was a surprise to everybody. Surprise to everybody.
I thought the look on Bregman's face was priceless when McCormick was pitching.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt.
Can someone speak to make sure we can hear you on our end?
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. We're talking. We're talking.
Maybe it's yeah.
Jonathan, can you hear us?
I'll send him a chat message, Aaliyah.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a little bit of an audio problem in the room.
Yep. Yep. I think they have chat turned off. So I don't think I can
Yeah.
send him a chat.
That's correct.
Did you see anybody in the room that you recognize that I could send a text to?
Um, Tim Busha, I'm sure is in the room.
Okay, I'll send Tim a text right now.
In 2025, and I'd like to call to order Region 6 Anderson Regional Planning Group Planning Meeting. So welcome this morning to everyone. And before we get started, we hadn't met since May. I would like to ask, got two things I want to share. First, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence as we think about those who lost their lives in a flooding event, which is part of what our mission is to prevent those type of things from happening. Of course, we're not Kerrville and experience flash floods like that, at least in most of our region. But if everyone just take a few moments and count our blessings and comfort to those. Thank you for that courtesy. Another sad news I want to share is I found out Monday, our member Bob Kozar passed away unexpectedly on August 2nd. And he was very involved in the community of Taylor Lakes and El Lago and was instrumental to them. We had sure appreciated his insight and input into our group, and he'll be missed. Just wanted to pass that along. With that, Timothy, we can start roll call.
Timothy Busca. Aaliyah Vincent.
Present. And can you confirm that you hear our audio?
We can't hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that you can hear
I
any of
do
us.
see you though. Erwin Burton.
Here.
I think it's on our end again, because Earl's talking.
Yeah. Oh, Augustus Campbell. Matthew Barrett. Tina Peterson.
Yes, I am here.
You see it there. Elisa Masai Donovan.
Present.
Elisa Masai Donovan.
Yeah, present here. Can't hear me?
Gotcha.
I'm here.
Connie Patier.
Present.
Thank you, Connie. Paul Lott.
To Jabra Speak 810, go to the Bluetooth menu on connect.
Paul Lott. Anada Rafai. Anada Rafai. Paresh. You there?
Present. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Eduardo Arias. Eduardo Arias. Todd Burr.
Present.
We do, but we have two more. Christina Quintero.
Present.
And Imelda Diaz. We do have.
See you. Correct the guns on.
Okay. Hope Zubek.
Present.
Michelle Ellis. Michelle Ellis. Kristen Lambert.
Present.
Thank you. Joel Clark. Joel Clark. Santiago Franco. Nicholas Collins.
Present.
Thank you, Nicholas. Belinda Johnson. Belinda Johnson. Justin Bauer.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Justin. Ellie Alpery. Ellie Alpery. Tom Height. Michael Turco. Brandon Wade. Sally Bacco.
Present.
Thank you, Sally. Lisa Mares. Lisa Mares. And we call Todd's name. Liv Hasselbeck. Thank you. Thank you. Mark Vogler. Mark Vodler. Alyssa Max. Brian Edmondson. Oh, well, that was the non-voting members. Yeah, I'm going into the.
Aaliyah, can you hear and speak?
Yeah, I can hear. Are you able to hear me now?
We can hear you.
Thank you.
Timothy, do we have any registered public comments?
No, sir.
Item number 4, discussion and possible action to reappoint regional flood planning group members whose terms have expired. So many of you
Can't hear you.
terms for the first water plan or flood plan, and then at a meeting we had almost a little over a year ago, we drew lots to see who would be a 2-year term and who would be a 5-year term, with the purpose of getting the terms off cycle. So half of us were 2-year, half of us were 5-year, all of us 2-year. So as a quasi-official action, I will first ask identify the members whose term has expired. Or it'll be voting position counties: Erwin Burden, Public 1, Augustus Campbell, Coastal Communities, Bob Kosar, Municipalities, Paresh Ladd, Industries, Jim Bushup, Small Business, Connie Potier, Flood Districts, Tina Peterson, Agricultural Interests, Lisa Donald. I would ask courtesy first, for those members whose term has just recently expired, do you still have an interest in serving? Raise a hand, say yes.
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 And if you want to say no, you can say no. But hearing none, I'm happy to continue to serve. Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion from the planning group to nominate, if I'm correct, Aaliyah, or if you want to give the official.
I'm happy to speak to it and then to make a motion as well. So for everyone, for all the members, this is in Article 5, Section 2 of our bylaws. As the chair described, the last time we did this, we created these staggered terms that were required in our bylaws. Now we're in a cycle where each time the terms expire, we're talking about renewal of an additional 5 years. And so in this case, the 8 positions that have expiration dates in July of 2025. Those are the ones that would be subject to renewal. As mentioned, unfortunately, Bob Kosar has passed away. His position would be vacant at this time. And so we would be motioning for the renewal of the seven members, Erwin Burden, Augustus Campbell, Paresh Ladd, Tim Busha, Connie Pothier, Tina Peterson, and Elisa Donovan. And in our Article 5, that is subject to a majority vote of the total voting membership that is required for the continuation of those subsequent terms. So I would make a motion for those 7 individuals that I just read out loud to serve an additional renewal term of 5 years that would expire in 2030.
We had a motion by Lee, a second by Matt. Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Sounds like more than 2/3, so the motion carries. Thank you.
And I
Next
could,
one.
just for the record, Mr. Chair, this one's just a majority vote, so I think you've got it.
Yes, yes. Then we'll move on to item 5, Texas Water Development Board update.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Region 6. Just for the people that do not know who I am, my name is Nicholas Collins with the Texas Water Development Board. I am the Regional Flood Planner for Region 6, 14, and 15. I just want to say I guess I have forgotten that we had not meeting before July 4th. I thought we had met after, but I do want to say from Texas Water Development Board, it is a very sad day after July 4th, what happened in Kirk County. Our heart goes out to them, to the people that lost their family and family members. I want to say that if there is any questions about what is happening with Cycle 2 following July 4th, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email. You can get my email either from Jonathan or go to the Texas Water Development Board website and get that. I would put it in the chat, but it looks like the chat is closed. But yeah, if you have any questions or any concerns with Cycle 2 after that, please do reach out. But the Texas Water Development Board is hosting a technical conference call on 9/12/2025. Please submit your questions by 9/5/2025. You can submit them to me or you can submit them to the flood planning email, but make sure to put it's from Region 6. TWDB also made some updates to Exhibit C technical guidelines. These are available on our second cycle planning documents webpage. We are not going to be making any more updates to Exhibit C going forward, as the deadline was, I believe it was July 31st. Freese Nichols will also be coming to region meetings in person and online to present about the new nature-based solutions manual they created in collaboration with TWDB. They should be reaching out for coordination about the meeting they will be attending. I believe Maggie is in coordination with them and potentially has a date for them to come out. And then TWDB also sent out a newsletter, has been posted on our website, summarizes communication actions by the board from February 2025 to July 2025. And again, if anybody has any questions or concerns or anything that they would like to talk about, you're more than welcome to reach out and talk and email me or call me, whichever one.
Well, thank you, Nick. Appreciate that. And Jonathan or Timothy will make your email available to all members of the planning group here. All right. Next item would be number 6, approval of meeting minutes. Our meeting minutes weren't posted in the agenda and meeting material items, so we will not be taking action on item number 6 today. Move on to item number 7, liaison reports pertaining to other regions, progress, and other related entities. And, as far as to the Trinity region, I saw Todd Burr.
Yes, sir. They are kind of Yes, they're following along with kind of what we're doing. They're getting their communication committee going just like we are, and we'll start their outreach just like we are. So nothing outstanding to report.
Thank you, Todd. Special for us today for the Natchez region, we have Steve Moon and Steve Hasselbeck. Out of 10 times, I got it right. But I said it after Steve's. They're in our neighboring region, so they're here today in person to join us, and we'll offer y'all the floor to tell us a little about the Natchez.
Yes, thank you. So it's, we've dialed into the past and just went to the line and then Lee and I were allowing us to attend. As you said, we just went through the same process and all of our members continued on to the calls. Tip one. Oh, that's right. We have 2 openings, one for water districts and then one for. So we're in the process of going through the process. We too are in the same boat in terms of working through the tasks for the second planning cycle. And we are just getting started on our community outreach. And so one of the things at least I'm looking forward to is how maybe we can move your best practice. Thanks for allowing us to be here.
Thank y'all for joining us today. On Lower Brazos, I didn't see Mark on there, so we'll, then Region H, I think Turco was not in here as well, but I think Sally is here. Been a while since we've seen you, Sally. What's going on at the Gulf Coast Protection District?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I do apologize for my absence. My day job required me to be in Austin during the legislative session, regular session. And so that was the reason for my absence. But I have a lot to update you on with the Gulf Coast Protection District. On July 11th, we released 2 requests for qualifications. One is they're both for the preliminary design and environmental clearance work on the Bolivar Roads gate system and on the Bolivar and West Galveston Beach and Dune system. Those are 2 RFQs. They were, like I said, they were released on July 11th. The closing date on that is August 22nd. The board will make a selection at the October meeting with a plan to have contracts in place by December. We have our project design agreement amendment that is currently with the Office of Management and Budget in DC. This is going to be the key amendment for us. It will help to facilitate accelerating our funding to the Corps and receive work in kind credit for our work on aspects of the project. We've been meeting with GLO on sediment source studies. We just had a meeting this week and we hope to have an update from them on sediment sampling activities and a final report this fall. We're also working with the Texas A&M at Galveston on a gate alternative study. We expect to have a draft report sometime very soon. We've been working closely with Houston pilots on this as we proceed further into design discussions on that gate system. We're also meeting with Houston on a monthly basis to talk about Lake Houston dredging and sediment source evaluation possibilities there. We'll be meeting with the Lake Houston Dredging and Maintenance District. This was a district created out of legislation passed during the regular session this year. We're also coordinating with Texas A&M University at Galveston, Rice University, and some other institutions to create an academic advisory council to support GCPD on our development of the Coastal Texas project. And we hope to have a contract in place sometime in September. And lastly, most importantly, Congressman Weber was able to get a $5 million earmark for our community project funding request in the fiscal year 2026 Energy and Water Development Appropriations Bill. That was reported from committee, has not taken House floor action yet. You may recall he was successful in doing the same last year. Unfortunately, all the CPF's earmarks were wiped out in the annual CR that Congress passed back in March. We're hoping that won't happen again. We've heard some discussion that, you know, they want to try and keep the CPFs in place. So we're hoping that will keep stay in place. That'll be very big. One other item I wanted to mention with the Texas legislature, Representative Dennis Paul authored the Gulf Coast Protection Account bill. This is going to be really big for us. It sets up a dedicated Gulf Coast Protection Account that can be used for storing funds to accrue interest and appropriations and funding that we might draw upon for non-federal share for the Coastal Texas project. It's not funded yet, but I think with the focus on Gulf Coast protection, disaster protection, this is a huge step for us. So I believe, one other quick thing, our G28, this is the breakwaters that we're currently working on. We're doing the design work on that. We're on schedule. It's about 30% design deliverable at this point. And there has been some marginal impact identified with oyster reefs, but they want to do a further, GLO wants to do a little more study to ascertain any significant oyster reef impacts that may require in the future relocation or addressment somehow. So I believe that is it, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I want to just say, how very, very sorry I am to hear of Bob Kosar's passing. He is, for us coastal communities, he has always been such a wonderful individual to work with and such a tremendous expertise on flood issues and concerns for coastal communities and how it impacts us in so many unique ways. So I'm very, very sorry to hear about that.
Thank you, Sally. Exciting times in the Gulf Coast Protection District. Thank you. All right, we will move on to item number 8. Discussion and possible action to appoint additional members to the Technical Committee and our Public Engagement Committee. We wanted to have this as an action item on this agenda in case there were additional individuals who wanted to serve on these committees, because our planning group, Leah will correct me if I'm wrong, the planning group has to vote on those members, and we needed to have an action item so we could actually execute.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
I'll be honest, specifically, we did this so that Bob could serve and engage on the committee. The situation doesn't allow for that. So if any other volunteers exist online or in person today that want to serve, please raise your hand. Usually serving on committee is, engagement. If you think you have interest and you can kind of first, you can generally, those are public meetings, so you can participate as a public and just watch and hear. Wouldn't be able to offer input or guidance for our planning group through that committee. And so again, we'll open the floor if anyone has an interest in adding their name to the volunteerism opportunities. We can definitely make sure John don't make a note of that, and invite the public and.
Mr. Chairman. I had a
Yes.
quick question. I know that the committees are made up of voting members, and obviously, non-voting members have the opportunity to attend and observe the committee work. I don't have the expertise, I think, for the technical committee, but if there is anything that I can do to assist the public engagement committee, I'm happy to volunteer.
Well, thank you for that, Sally. And Leah, is that for a non-voting member? How does that work?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So we would go through the formal appointment process to put that non-voting member on the committees. We have from time to time either had non-voting members or alternates. So I think that would be a welcome addition, and we would just take formal action.
The rarity of having such a eager volunteer, I want to not pass up. Can I get a motion from the membership to appoint Sally Bacco to serve non-voting?
I move.
On the public.
Second.
First and second, I think. Lisa. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. The chairman indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations,
Thanks,
Sally.
Sally.
Thank you very much.
We will then proceed to item number 9. Technical committee report. This is really just, we wanted these to be standing items on the agenda. I mean, as y'all are aware, if there's something formal that you're going to need to make sure we get that to Jonathan or Timothy in advance to make it an action item. But today it would be an update from the technical committee. Your chair.
Right here. Good morning. So I'm here to give a quick update. Which met on July the 2nd. And I'm going to slide they're going to provide them.
Al.
Just like to hear you. Sorry. No worries, no worries. Okay, so I'm saying I am going to provide an update for the technical committee, which met on July 2nd. And I'm going to keep it brief since the consultant team is going to provide more details later this morning. We started the update from the GLO, we got an update from the GLO, and they gave us a summary of the ongoing flood studies in the central region. Their goal is to identify areas most at risk of flooding and to help prioritize large-scale mitigation projects. They also introduced a new tool called Match that can help communities align unfunded projects with available funding opportunities. Then we moved on to review updates on the flood risk mapping for both the existing and the future conditions. The team is continuing to refine maps using newer models and data sets to help improve accuracy. For future conditions, they're looking ahead to the year 2060, and they're factoring in things such as climate change, sea level rise, and subsidence and other factors. So these updates are going to help us get a better picture of what flood risk is going to look like in the long term. And then we had a really meaningful discussion about floodplain management standards, which are part of the task 3A. So the question on the table was whether the standards that were recommended in the first cycle should stay as just recommendations, or whether we should adopt some of them as required for entities who want their projects included in the plan. So there was some general agreement that certain standards, like participation in the National Flood Insurance Program, and then the development of the no adverse impact policies, those are widely supported, and we think that they could be adopted. But the recommendations might be a little bit more difficult, especially for some of the smaller communities, for them to implement, especially if they lack funding or staff. Some committee members expressed the need to hear directly from those smaller jurisdictions before we make any decisions. So my understanding is that we're going to be holding a workshop later this year to continue that conversation and gather more input. And that was it. And the last thing I closed up with, I just wanted an update on Task Force C, which talked about the FMEs that were supposed to be ready to move over to FMPs. And we wanted a little bit more clarification on how those projects work. And that's it.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 10, Public Engagement Committee.
Yes, sir. Maggie is, I think she's put some slides in here. So we did have our Public Engagement Committee meeting. And if Maggie's on, I'll let her cover the slides that she put in.
Yeah, I think we.
Come to this.
All right, I think we had some really productive discussion at our last Public Engagement Committee meeting, but in particular wanted to provide some updates related to website updates and discussion on communications plan and future public engagement workshops. So I've actually, I think Connor Stokes with Holloway is online and can provide the update on behalf of our team.
Thanks, Maggie. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Wonderful. So we just recently installed updates to the previous or to the existing website for the Regional Flood Planning Group. This was established, as I believe everyone is aware, this was established during the first cycle. So what we wanted to do here moving into the second cycle is, of course, make sure everything is updated to reflect where we currently are in the planning process, as well as to be more intentional about the information that we're providing, making sure that our stakeholders, the public, are aware of where we are as we move throughout the second planning cycle at the various stages, so that they're more plugged in and aware of where we are as we move through our various milestones. In addition to that, we just wanted to, refresh the site, make sure, it is as user-friendly as possible, bring a refreshed, more refined look to that, and to allow for, easy accessibility for the site. I guess last thing I want to mention is, the site is intended to be our central hub of information. So in all of our engagements as we move forward, and like we did during the first planning cycle, we want to constantly direct people back to this website. And like I said, previously, making sure that we're keeping it updated with relevant information, calls to action, as we have them. So in all of our materials as we move forward, this will be our central hub. This will be where the public stakeholders can send comments, questions, inquiries, and the technical consultant team can coordinate internally and manage those responses in a timely manner.
Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Todd.
Can I make one quick comment? Just real quick. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your presentation, Connor. Please go ahead.
Sally, go, by all means, go ahead before we move on.
I wanted to make one quick observation. The select committees on disaster preparedness and flooding that were set up in the House and the Senate held a joint hearing. And of course, Texas Water Development Board came to speak to that joint committee. In addition, they also spoke to the House Natural Resources Committee last week. in each and every instance, they were laying out the flood planning process and the hard work of regional flood planning groups to develop the state flood plan and what that process was like and what came from that. And now in the second phase of, going through the 5-year plan, the thought occurred to me that right now legislators are very focused on flood. And Connor, you may already have this integrated in your plan goals, but it may be advisable to coordinate with legislators while they're home back in their districts, or at the very least their district staffs, to kind of help build awareness of our engagement process, because having them in the loop each and every time we are out there in the public, and to the degree we can draw them into whatever public engagement efforts we're hosting, would be good for us.
Thank you for your comments, Sally.
Yep, thank you, Sally. So on this slide, just want to highlight that we do have a communications plan for the regional flood planning group. We did have one that was approved during our first planning cycle by the planning group. So what we've done here early in our second planning cycle is make sure to update our previous communications plan. Excuse me. And this is really poignant at this point with the recent flooding in Central Texas, and emphasizes the really critical need to have an aligned plan that the planning group agrees to and understands as it relates to coordination and communication during unfortunate events like that. So in addition to outlining our engagement strategies, during the second planning cycle, the tools, tactics that we plan to utilize throughout the cycle, this plan really identifies as well our communications protocols for as we receive inquiries from the media, questions, requests for interviews, there's a process and protocol outline on how we can coordinate internally and address those things in an aligned, coordinated manner. And Maggie, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if it hasn't been distributed already, our intention is to get this updated communications plan sent out to the regional planning group here soon, so y'all can take a look at that. If there's any questions, concerns, revisions, we'd of course love to hear those before it's finalized, and of course make sure that everyone has a copy of this. So these communications protocols, these procedures that I'm mentioning, everyone can have an awareness of those and understand the process. As we do get requests for interviews or any sort of external communication.
Thanks, Connor. And I'll just add, I know some of the pertinent discussion around having a designated spokesperson and clear protocols for engaging the media. Something we talked about was we're still in hurricane season. Likelihood things could happen. You could have a flood event or rainfall event. And so I want to make sure that we've passed out this information and this plan to the group members. So y'all have it as a reference. And in your resources, but it's also something we can consider posting on the website to have located somewhere centrally, just with all of the personal contact information redacted. So that's something that we can send out to the group for you all to review and consider posting on our website.
I think that's all for that. I mean, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 11 is going to be back up. Update from the City Center Regional Flood Planning Group Technical Consultant on the 2028 planning cycle, including discussion of possible action through task 2B methodology for defining future condition
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, so I'm just going to kick us off here. We've actually got a number of folks from our team who are prepared to present on technical tasks for the regional flood planning group today. A lot of this will be opportunities to have a discussion and facilitate discussion with the regional flood planning group and collect some initial input, with the exception of task 2B, future conditions flood risk analysis. In particular, we're looking for action from the regional flood planning group to approve that methodology so that we can request use of that methodology formally to the water development. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanner to talk about task 2A, existing conditions flood risk.
It's Maggie. Go to the next slide. As a refresher is the existing conditions flood risk analysis that we are doing as a part of 2A. And then on the next slide, you've seen most of the content on this slide, but we did want to give a big update that we have coordinated with Harris County Flood Control District, and we do have approval to use MapNext for the mapping in Harris County. This is with the caveat that when we publicly post this for public comment, it will be redacted until it is publicly available by Harris County Flood Control District, which should be end of this year, early next year. And so we did want to make that news available to the RFPG that we have come to a consensus on that, and we'll be moving forward with mapping the region and have made a lot of progress. If we'll go to the next slide. Wait, yes. Oh, yes, Tina.
Thank you. I am sorry to interrupt. I just did want to flag that I am going to have to step out of this meeting. Tim, I know you're aware, and I would like to transfer my position to the alternate who is on the call, Gary Bezemek. So just wanted to flag for y'all for the meeting notes that I will be stepping away.
Thank you, Tina.
And so one thing that we did want to show the initial results of our update this cycle, we are mapping the 10-year in addition to the 100-year and the 500-year. And because we have more accurate data sets and more updated mapping with Atlas 14, we are risk in our region. A good thing to note on this slide is that when you look at this second cycle's 100-year and last cycle's 500-year, they are fairly similar, which does make sense with the current consensus on the Atlas 14 updates that the current 100-year with Atlas 14 will look like the previous pre-Atlas 14 500-year. Are in the process of reviewing and QCing our map and will be presenting it to the group at a later date. And then from this analysis, we will be moving into, Tim, you can go to the next slide, our exposure analysis. So we are making updates to some of the inputs that will go into our exposure analysis for both Task 2A and Task 2B. So we are updating structures. We received a data set from Harris County with updated structures in the county, which will be helpful to have a more accurate and conservative understanding of the exposure. We are reviewing critical facilities region-wide and updating as needed. For low water crossings, those have been defined by the board as any bridge or roadway that is overtopped by the 2-year. And so we are identifying those low water crossings using model results from our hazard analysis. And if the models happen to not have the 2-year frequency, we are extrapolating down to the 2-year to be able to identify those low water crossings across our region. And then finally, our roadways and agricultural parcels will be a part of this exposure analysis that we are about to proceed with as a part of 2A. So that is the updates that we have on 2A. If there's any questions or comments before Donnie moves on with 2B. Hearing none, I'll pass it on to Johnny.
All right, thank you, everybody. Good morning. We're going to go through task 2B, the future flood risk analysis. The goal, as outlined by the Texas Water Development Board for this task, is to perform future condition flood risk analyses for the region. There are 3 components to this. The flood hazard analysis, which basically we will provide, or the deliverable will be a map that shows inundation extents according to the future flood risk analysis. The flood exposure analysis, this is where we will hone in on who and what might be harmed. For example, how many homes, how many people, how many businesses, roadways, agricultural areas that are exposed to the floods. And then the vulnerability analysis is where we will take, kind of compute the social vulnerability index averages from the flood exposure analysis to understand spatially where the flood risk is and where the communities are most vulnerable. From task 2B, we really want to just understand the future flood risk for planning purposes, and this is not a regulatory product. We're going to the next slide. Our scope for this work will be to analyze flood risk future condition development board had one of their consultants Fathom produce future condition maps for the entire state of Texas. Want to emphasize that this was using approximate modeling techniques, and this produced flood maps for the entire state.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Could you restart your presentation on task 2B scope slide? It cut out when you changed to the slide. We didn't hear anything.
The scope. Thank you. Next slide, just. Yeah, I'll start over from here. Can you hear me okay? Online? Okay.
Yes.
So the planning groups will analyze the future flood risk for year 2060 for the 10-year, 100-year, and 500-year storm events. The 10-year is new this cycle. There are 3 possible data sources we are pulling from for this analysis. The first one is the future conditions Fathom data, in which the Texas Water Development Board and their consultants produce future condition maps for the entire state of Texas using approximate modeling techniques. The second bullet point there are any community models within our region that have produced future condition models would also be a source of data. In the San Jacinto region, the San Jacinto Master Drainage Plan is the only community model we have that includes future conditions modeling. In small.
Yeah, the audio in the room is cutting out again.
Audio cut out again.
Yeah, I can hear you now,
Maybe
but there was a gap.
Oh, it's not. Maybe. Maybe the test.
Am I still breaking up?
It seems better right now.
Okay. Well, continue to let me know if I need to repeat something. Moving on to the next slide. You're going to see the same slide about 3 times in this presentation. Just wanted to flash it up here in the beginning to show you what the approach is going to be. We divided this up into three different zones to consider. We have the northern zone, which is anything north of Harris County. We have the central zone, which and then we have the curves. And we'll march through each of those late in the future slides. But just wanted to point out that the models here, they're listed in order of priority. So if they're on top, those would be the first priority. And if they are at the bottom, they would be last priority.
It appears that sound is cut out again.
An overview of some data, but also some of the things why would it to the bottom. Is there a way of reading on my phone, or if that works? Yeah, I see their screens coming in and out.
No matter how close you are to that connection.
Yeah.
As long as you can just continue.
Okay. All right, I'll continue on. The next slide, Tim. Okay, just a quick overview of the future conditions Fathom data. The Fathom models, they incorporate future climate variability, rainfall patterns, and sea level rise. In both of these, they're informed by global climate models. These models also incorporate subsidence, taking data from NOAA and the Harris-Galveston Subsidence District, and land use change through USGS datasets. There are three possible future scenarios that are included within the Fathom data, and we will be using scenario 3, which represents the most significant or quote worst case scenario. Scenario 3 is recommended for use by the Texas Water Development Board for all planning groups in the state. We believe it is suitable for the Sanderson based on how much our rainfall depths have changed when going from TP40 to Atlas 14 in 2018.
All right, the audio is cut out again. It looks like whenever
And
the
the slide
screen goes dark,
where you-
yeah, so sorry, it did cut out
Yes.
again. Every time that you see Jonathan's screen go from the images to just, darkness, we're not hearing anything.
We stepped away to go and get a tool to try.
We were gonna take a break after 2-5-minute break. We just stick around.
Oh, Liz, when the chain breaks up?
I think it's when everyone's video goes out like that.
No, so Jonathan, where we see Jonathan Spellman's screen, when we see the images of the people in the room, we're also hearing it. But when that screen goes dark and it doesn't have any images and it just says Jonathan's name on it, it appears that maybe that's when we're getting a glitch or something in the internet in the room. But when that happens, we're not hearing. And then it comes back again when the images come back again. So like right now, it's a dark screen. We can't hear anything.
Maybe the connection, maybe having connection.
And now we can. Yeah, I think it's a connection problem.
And I'll observe he doesn't go dark on my screen, but I can't hear him but it doesn't show black like you're describing.
All right, Elisa, thank you for giving a different vantage point.
Well, we're going to take, it's 9:56. We'll take a break to 10:01 and see if we can get some better bandwidth. I mean, I don't see a leader. You start mine off or use so much bandwidth.
What if I used my?
Sorry.
Can you start the video too?
Could we keep it off to help with the bandwidth or?
We see the screen now.
Yes. It's good. And the fluvial flooding would be any flooding that's caused by rivers overtopping their banks. That's the kind of flooding that you see on FEMA effective maps. That's all fluvial flooding. And then the coastal change factors would be absolute changes in sea level, according to the climate models. So we are, again, using the significant future scenario. I know it says lower central upper on the slide, but I mean minimum.
I got nothing. Is everybody else frozen?
Yeah, I can't hear anything either, Tim.
Yeah, me neither.
Todd, sorry.
Do y'all still see their, oh, there?
No.
Yep.
Hi.
Well, we can see them, we can't hear them.
You can see the screen. Can you hear us?
Okay, now we can hear you, but we cannot see any slideshow.
Should we share?
It says up there resume.
Okay.
Yeah, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
We can.
So the change factors were computed across the entire state of Texas. And just to give you all an idea of what kind of additional rainfall we're looking at for the year 2060, in our region, we're averaging around 14% higher in terms of rainfall, expected rainfall in the year 2060. Move on to the next slide. I want to just brief you on some of the conclusions from the Fathom report, since this is important for our analysis. For the pluvial and for the fluvial and pluvial scenarios, when future land use and subsidence are introduced and there are no changes in climate, the median change in water surface elevation is 0. It just doesn't mean that there are no changes to
Okay, audio's down again.
Okay.
Now back
And we're
up.
back. Okay. For the coastal scenarios, when future land use and subsidence are introduced, median increase in water surface elevation is 2 inches, not very substantial. But the bottom line is that for all scenarios, future climate forcing is the biggest factor, the biggest driver in water surface elevation increases. And just wanted to point that part out. We'll move on to the next slide.
Audio's out.
See how it affects floodings in the region.
Yeah, we're back.
So the expectation is that the future floodplain should be wider than the existing floodplain. And so that's something that we're looking at when we are comparing the, or when we are reviewing the future floodplain data from Fathom. So I just want to show you one more slide on what that data looks like. I wanted to describe the picture on the right. This is in the Spring Creek area, North Harris County. This is, we have a 2D BLE model, and those flood extents are shown in blue. I'm sorry, in red. And the future Fathom floodplains are shown in blue. And as you can see, the red extents are larger than the blue, which would go against the expectation. And this happened fairly commonly around the entire San Jacinto region, where the future Fathom floodplain was smaller than the existing flood extents. For that reason, we are proposing that we will utilize and leverage the existing models. We'll modify the existing models to produce future flood risk maps. We still intend to use future Fathom, and they will be utilized wherever pluvial flood risk is not already defined. So again, here's the approach slide that talked about our approach through each of the zones. I'm going to walk through this list. On the top, we have the northern zone. The first priority will be the San Jacinto Regional Master Drainage Plan future models. Those will be simulated with future rainfall and then remapped. The next thing on the list there is the 2D Spring Creek BLE model that will be simulated with future
Y'all are
rainfall.
no longer sharing your slideshow. If you can reshare your screen. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey guys, we're not
I
hearing
believe y'all are
audio.
frozen again.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I'm going to move on to the central zone. This is the Harris County region. This one will be fairly simple. We're just going to open map next model. And that will be filled in with the future Fathom scenario 3. And then finally, for the coastal zones, we have 2D GLO models and 2D BLE models that will be simulated with future rainfall. And we will also include future coastal condition in those models as well. And then fill that in with future Fathom scenario 3.
Down here before having some type of things slowing down our presentation for efficiency. And we asked for question and feedback on this approach, and we have specific.
Yeah, definitely. So yes, because of the technical difficulties, we'll just pause right here and ask if there are any questions from the group concerning this approach right here. If there are any specific questions, we can dive into them we have more slides in here, but
So your upcoming slides kind of talk about each type of these modeling methods.
they do.
So we can see if I can. So what you're going to use in the central part of Harris County, because of Harris County having MapNext, you're going to take the MapNext models, which are the latest and greatest models that Harris County's developed. You're going to change the range and see what the results are. And if there's some areas that don't have a MapNext model, you'll depend on Fathom to tell you about the river range flooding, which I think is fluvial.
Yeah, the Fathom will stitch in the pluvial parts.
On the coast, what is SLR?
Sea level rise.
Sea level. Pretty right there. And then your 2D GLO models, which have been ongoing for years and built along coast, and the base level information being and with the goal being you're developing future flood risk based on assumptions that are kind of generally accepted in our industry of how to promote forecast future flooding based on current modeling methods that we have. And then what'll happen is you're going to then develop risk profiles based on the items you talk about, critical structures and things of that nature. That'll basically give us a new count of today, it's this, 2060, here's the level of risk. Well, the video is only required if we have an action item. Is everyone hearing? I just went through a little speech. Did everyone hear that?
Yeah, we could hear your recap. It was good.
Yep.
Well, if y'all change to mobile Wi-Fi, unfortunately, I don't have to kill the restart, which I prefer not to kill it. So there's some more highlights to highlight. I mean, an additional slide or two that are key to the discussion, because ultimately, I think, Maggie, what you're seeking is, hey, here's the approach. What do y'all think about it? We'd like approval to use this approach to go back to water development and say this is how we're going to do.
That's exactly right. So the Water Development Board has asked that if we choose to use any additional data or approaches beyond just the future fathom scenario 3, that we need to document and request approval of that methodology. So this is why we come to the flood planning group to request formal approval and authorization to submit that request to the water.
And I think why this is relevant, and I see Paresh has his hand up, we'll get to you in a second, Paresh, is because one of our regions, just like maybe the San Antonio and Dallas, are unique because there's so much local jurisdictional depth, detailed modeling ongoing for the communities. There's data that we have in our region that some other regions may not have. And so the standard is what every other region can have, and then if you have more, you really want to get approval for them. So Paresh has a question.
Kim, I think you answered some of it again. Houston Harris County kind of has a lot of detailed information again with our stormwater master plan as well. So I think you've answered it. If there's a need for that additional detail from the city of Houston or Harris County, we're willing to share that info as well to include as part of this approach.
Thanks, Paresh.
All right.
Other voting members, not to cut a detailed presentation down, but I think the nuts and bolts of what the technical consultant is looking for is this is the framework they would like to use. This is not line and verse versus what Texas Water Development Board has broadcast to the regions to use. So they're seeking permission, and what I think Maggie would like to have is a motion on the floor to accept the approach identified by the technical consultant for the 3 zones and apply that technology and get the appropriate approvals from Texas Water Development.
I'll make that motion. With the caveat that I have a question, but none of my questions will change the evidence.
All right, we do have a motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second by Milda and a motion by Augie. So Augie, your hands up behind me. So ask the question.
Actually, and so just the broad view is really kind of maybe you said you used you're going to incorporate not in this code, which is a great problem. Is there? What's that? Right. So that was my question: is when will that be made?
In our recent coordination with Harris County Flood Control District, I know Gary is also online, so feel free to jump in if you if I mischaracterize any of our coordination, but Flood Control has indicated that they plan to publish the MapNext mapping by end of this year or early next year. So that's not, doesn't really work out for us to be able to submit this technical memorandum to the Water Development Board. So the compromise that we've kind of worked through in order to mitigate rework is to start working with the MapNext models now, but hold off on publishing any of that data on our website or in materials for presentations until that mapping has been published by Harris County Flood Control District to the public. We don't want to get ahead of them. We want to support them in their thoughtful and intentional rollout of that information. And so that's kind of our compromise here is we're working with that data now. So it doesn't slow us down or slow down our progress, but we are going to hold off on publishing that publicly until Harris County Flood Control District does.
With a good synopsis be, you're going to have a bunch of data with a bunch of maps. It's going to tell you what's flooding. You can count everything that's flooding. You can be in a table, but no one's going to see the map.
That's right.
And Gary, I've heard the end of the year before, so I'm not. I'll get into the comment quick.
That's probably.
Any other comments or questions from the voting membership? Hearing none, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor of technical consultant following the task to be approach presented today, indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Thank you, team. All right, you can move on to item number 12. And this PowerPoint is online on the website, so everyone can read it at their.
Needs to protect the 3D, right? Start.
We got through the major action.
Oh,
items, but
got another. Go.
we had a good number of other technical tasks we were hoping to go over this.
3B.
Keep going.
Which one? 3B. I jumped the gun. But we may need more to cliff numbers.
Yeah. All right. I will try that. Yep.
Is this the right?
That's correct. All right. I think everyone's online. Raise your hand or indicate if you can't hear us at any point, but I will try to give an abbreviated version. For those of you who I have not yet met, my name is Rachel Herr. I am a project manager at HAF, and we are a sub to FNI helping on this effort. One of the tasks that we're helping on is task 3B, which is needs analysis. There's no action needed today, but we wanted to introduce this to you all. So as scoped by the Texas Water Development Board, the needs analysis is to identify locations within the region that the Regional Flood Planning Group considers to have the greatest flood mitigation and flood study risk needs. And you do that in by two methods. You look at areas with highest flood risk and areas with map gaps. The factors that lead into those are all listed on the slide. You can check them out. I won't read them all to you. But there are 9 factors that go into it, and how those values are calculated and determined is kind of up to the kind of up to you all, to this group. So if we want to go to the next slide, I'll outline kind of what we did in the previous cycle. Some of you may remember this if you were part of the group then, but what we did was take those 9 categories. They were the same in the last cycle, and we made 20 subcategories that fed into those categories. We split the region into 115. We split the region by HUC boundaries into 115 watersheds, and then each watershed got a score based on all of that criteria. Using those scores, we were able to create maps and identify which areas had the greatest need. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, we can see the results of that effort in the last cycle. The map on the left is known flood risk. On the right is the knowledge gaps. And then obviously we did a high, medium, low, red being high. You can see a lot of that area. One thing to consider on these maps, why they look a little angry, for lack of a better word, is that this did not incorporate the Map Next effort that Harris County was going through at the time. So if we want to go to the next slide, some of the data that feeds into this known flood risk comes from information that's compiled in previous tasks. So for instance, project evaluation in task 1, examples that fed into the criteria and the scoring included participation in the NFIP. In task 2A, the exposure analysis led to calculating number of critical facilities and population in the floodplain. That led to known flood risk. So did the effort in task 3A on practices, including which communities had higher standards. If we'd like to go to the next slide, the factors that led into the flood risk knowledge gaps included availability of maps and models, all of which is pulled from the effort that's done in task 1. And the factors that led into that included not just whether or not there was a map, but how old the map was. Obviously, a flood map from 1970 does not look the same as it would today, as well as the map and modeling types to determine kind of the accuracy of what we were looking at. So those are some of the factors that were considered during the last cycle. As a very quick high-level refresher. Moving on to this current cycle, we are looking at the strategy. You can go to the next slide, thank you. The strategy is currently under development. We might mirror the previous cycle, but we will likely align the effort with what is being done in task 3A, which Tanner will talk about next. And we will be seeking input from the technical committee and the full regional flood planning group as we go forward with this effort, including how to address these gaps and making recommendations. And if you'd like to go to my final slide, the deliverables for this include a chapter that will go into part of the regional flood plan, as well as revised updated figures and all associated GIS files. So one thing to highlight is that the results of this effort will help inform where FMXs should be targeted to reduce risk to flood life and property. Sorry, to reduce flood risk to life and property. As was mentioned in the memo that was part of the meeting materials for this meeting, there we have the opportunity to recommend FMSs to fill in any of the gaps in criteria. And we can consider expanding considerations to capture other FMSs, for example, early warning systems. So all of this information that we're utilizing has built on what effort we've done before, and we're also keeping an eye on what direction that we're going in to keep in line with the guidance given to us by the Texas Water Development Board. I kind of flew through that a little bit. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. All right, so on to Tanner.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about the evaluation and recommendation of flood management practices. I am going to try and keep this brief because we did send out pre-meeting materials on this as well that hopefully everyone did their homework coming to today's meeting. So y'all all have seen this slide before. This is last cycle's minimum standards that we recommended. And this cycle, we are looking to see if we would like to continue to recommend those standards, if we would like to adopt any standards, or if we would like to expand the list of minimum standards. We go to the next slide. So we've gone through most of the schedule and are currently presenting our analysis to the RFPG group. And again, we sent out pre-meeting materials discussing the current conversation that has gone on at the RFPG meeting in May, as well as the technical committee meeting in July, which is on, I believe, the next slide, Tim. Oh, A quick overview that is helpful to note before I get to what I've just mentioned is a look at current standards and the percentages we're meeting from a city and county overview. So we do have great participation in NFIP in our region. Entities with standards is at 82%. Entities with strong standards is at 46%. And then entities participating in the community rating system is 27%. So keep those numbers in mind with the next slide, Tim. We reached out as a part of our survey to collect public and stakeholder responses on our minimum standards to see what thoughts are on adopting or recommending standards as a part of this second cycle. And we did see a majority of the responses currently leaning towards adopting on the public side, and the wording of the question was slightly different on the stakeholder survey, but adopting or recommending these minimum standards versus not having any standards at all. So we are going to reach out for any feedback offline on these minimum standards and the conversation that we'll hopefully have around these minimum standards and recommending versus adopting them. But if you'll go to the next slide, Tim. A quick summary of kind of our pre-meeting materials that were sent out was that the May conversation around Task 3A was that we were considering continuing to recommend minimum standards because many communities have not received funding from the first cycle and from FIF competitions previously. When we met in July, Imelda already gave a quick overview of this, but there were 5 standards that were proposed for adoption, which were outlined in our pre-meeting materials that are posted online. And then as the technical consultant team, we have also presented a kind of hopefully consensus of what could potentially be the path forward, where we continue to recommend standards just so that we aren't just allowing anyone to apply for future thing. But then we take what Rachel just presented, the Task 3B analysis, and propose FMSs as a part of this Task 3A effort. And so again, Rachel presented on how we came up with a lot of FMEs, a lot of studies in the first cycle, and we already have a lot of studies in our region and we are collecting more studies. But if we could pivot our approach to now looking at FMSs, which would include things like flood warning systems, which are of course a hot button topic right now with some of the July 4th flooding and things along those lines, we could continue to build our guidance and our overall region standards without adopting those minimum standards and allowing some communities not meeting those standards to apply for future FIF funding. So I know I went through that quickly, but I do want to open the floor to the RFPG for discussion on Task 3A and 3B and recommending versus adopting minimum standards.
Valerie.
Good to hear.
I'm in full agreement with Nichols' recommendation. While the standards that are proposed by the technical committee for adoption, those are good standards. I think there's some unintended consequences that could come about there. Things that concern me first for the mid flood infrastructure funding cycle, that we do mid cycle application that's sitting there. We also don't know what the legislature might pass down as part of the special session following these flooding. It's a change thing. Kind of bigger concern, for example, the river authority, we're doing a project now with this money that's a region-wide study, it's the entire upper states of the river basin. This requirement was not in place at that time, but we still had to go and ensure that every community in the region had NFIP. There was one small one that didn't. Thankfully, this was the full requirements we were able to work around. My concern would be
this becomes a hard and fast rule. You could try to do a regional study that could fit master management, it could fit a large area, multiple counties, and if one county has a standard, one doesn't, it kills the project. One small area in that doesn't have standards. I feel like that's a big danger. And then the last thing is, again, speaking about the river boards, specifically other river boards, we don't participate in it 5 feet. That's not our, not the we don't have these standards. We don't dictate building. By not having those standards, we then ineligible. Even though it's not our job. Those be my concern.
Sally, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make 2 observations. One, the 2 disaster bills that have been filed, at least for this first special session, SB1 and HB1, do not go into any specificity on minimum standards. The second observation I want to make is, at least for the city of Galveston, the NFIP CRS program is absolutely essential. We are devoted to working that program and raising our levels in order to achieve greater, more effective mitigation, and more importantly, it's essential for our residents because it helps to reduce our flood insurance premiums. The challenge each and every legislative session, I've got to tell you, just as an FYI, is so frequently bills are filed that would preempt localities on building standards. I can't tell you how many times I have stood up in a hearing and said, of course, I'm speaking for Galveston in those instances, we must have this NFIP, the ability to require these NFIP CRS standards. We have to have TWIA wind load standards. It's absolutely essential. And I think you just need to keep that in mind. It is a constant tug of war. And I mean, even talking to the Texas Association of Builders this last session, I think they're beginning to recognize this is critical, but we really need to think about how we might engage on that issue because it's every session.
Thank you, sir.
And if that goes, and if we're preempted on that, whatever we put in this plan is going to be significantly challenged.
We're safer when
Thank you.
legislators talk the city. Any other comments or questions at this point? This is not a current action.
No, we will be following up at the September meeting with action, and we will collect additional feedback if needed after this RPG.
I think there's can't tell it's not do I do think that the feedback what we would like it to be adopted those standards. Those requirements, that's really helpful information because part of the question is, well, everybody's going to need it. Why not recommend these standards, not just recommendations? So I think you'll definitely provided that feedback. That's great. We think we had some of those concerns. You know, it's not be the results were good. But just so the technical committee doesn't require part of the we did want what not we weren't using those standards for adoption.
Great clarification, Augie. No other conversation. We'll go into our goals as a part of Task 3C. We wanted to give an update on our goals from the first cycle and where we are at status-wise. So the board has updated a couple of fields that we need to fill out this cycle to keep track of the goal themes, as well as the status of the goal from the past cycle and the % complete of that goal. So if you go to the next slide, we will look at substantially complete goals. And just to keep this in mind, any thoughts or considerations that we should have on specific goals we have from the first cycle and maybe potential rewording that is needed or additional goals that we need to add for the second cycle, please let us know. So we had 2 goals that currently we're considering substantially completed. The first one is increasing the amount of funding to the region by 10%. The wording of the goal was didn't have a baseline of what we were comparing to. So because we have had 15 FIF projects awarded in our region, we are currently in this interim conversation considering it complete. But again, we could potentially change the wording and clarification on what our baseline is so that that 10% is clear. The second one is expand the understanding of flood risk in the San Jacinto region. We have filled a lot of gaps since the first cycle in our mapping, and the region is fully mapped by Atlas 14. So that is a great outcome from the first cycle and current efforts on studies. I'm going to pause for a second on if anyone has any from our first cycle.
So I can jump in a little bit here to add some additional context. That goal related to increasing the value of state and federal funds awarded within the San Jacinto region by 10%. As Tanner mentioned, we didn't specifically set a baseline. And so what we might be able to do this cycle is document that one as, completed and set a new goal where we have some more specific metrics, and the group, after having gone through a whole cycle, we started to see what the FIF program looks like when it's actually tied to a completed state flood plan. We can set some very specific metrics for what the group would like to achieve with this planning process. Understand that 64 million is a drop in the bucket. It's not a mission accomplished for the group.
Great clarification. We can move to the next slide. These are goals that we have made. Yes, Sally.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry. In establishing the funding goal, you're limiting yourself to 15 flood infrastructure fund projects. Sometimes projects can be funded through budget riders that affect projects that may be in the plan. Is there any, have you thought about, or what effort might be involved in identifying those? I mean, if it's in the plan and it's funded, are you just limiting yourself to projects funded through the FIF? Or you're looking at projects that are in the flood plan that are funded by state funds, whether it's the FIF or a budget rider?
We're currently only considering FIF.
Okay.
But again, our goal is currently big, saying we could consider this one complete, and with our second cycle goals, have a more clear distinction on those types of questions. Sally, I think that's a great point.
Okay.
The group also has, the FIF is what is directly tied to the work of this regional flood planning. Tying our consideration for funding with the FIF fund, which is directly tied to the plan, I think that may be something we want to do. But to Sally's point, maybe it's worth tracking other appropriations. That might just be a little more difficult to really nail down.
Well, it could show greater progress in funding and completing projects. That's my only point.
Yeah, it's intended to include federal funds too. Once you have something in a state flood plan, sometimes it does attract other sources of funds. And I know that was part of the goal, but I don't know how easily measured that is. That's a good question.
Just for clarification, really this regional study is aimed at getting, and if we get other sources of funding, that's bonus. I see. Really, what our task is to get projects that have a shot at getting that funding. And if Sally can make it rain and get all this money from other sources, that's amazing. It's
Perfect. We can move to the next slide. These are goals that are in progress. So increasing the number of public entities that invest in stormwater infrastructure by 10%, and then the one below that, the first one's by 2023, and then the second one is 25% by 2053. And so as we have been reaching out to different sponsors as a part of our task force effort, we have taken account of FMEs that have been evaluated and elevated to FMEs since the first cycle. And so we have made some progress on those two entities. I do want to caveat that when we look at the number of entities identified by the board, it's in the last two far right cells, it's over 1,000 entities in our region. So we could again clarify for this cycle's goals what we want to consider similar to the third goal on the list, which is specific to flood regulatory authorities within the region, adopting standards equal to or exceeding minimum standards. That we have 93 entities that are flood-related authorities in our region, and 76 of them do have higher standards. So we have made fairly substantial progress on that at 82%. And then the last two is increasing out. This is an outreach and education goal, and improving coordination through the RFPG process by communicating with stakeholders, reaching out to them, having conversations about what needs to be in our plan and what has been completed, as well as our stakeholder survey that is online on our website. And we have made some progress on those two goals as well. So I'll pause again on these list of 5 goals, and if anyone has any additional suggestions that they would like to have.
To expand on something Tanner mentioned, the water development boards, entities, feature class, and list that we've got assigned for Region 6, that's inclusive of any organization that has some sort of flood-related authority. So that's inclusive of the Coastal Prairie Conservancy. It's inclusive of every single municipal utility district and water control and improvement district across the region. So we've got upwards of 1,000 individual entities technically listed, but it might be worth thinking about the specific types of entities that this group is particularly interested in having involved, in tracking involvement in the planning process. And so that might be an opportunity for adjustment this cycle to specify cities and counties or drainage districts and river authorities to make those goals a little more targeted, as opposed to expecting that every single mud and PUD and wicked has taken the survey.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a quick observation on the nature-based features goal. You have that the status of the goal is no. I just wanted to remind you that the Coastal Texas project, the storm surge protection project that is part of the flood mitigation projects listed in the state flood plan, you do have beach and dune systems. You do have aspects of that project that are nature-based oriented. So just a reminder.
Thank you, Sally. And yeah, we can move to the next slide. So these are the final goals that we have from the first cycle that we currently have marked as no progress. And so some of them, like what Sally just mentioned, we can clarify and make sure that how they are identified, how the FMXs are identified in our plan currently do, at least for the nature-based solutions, have it correctly marked if it's a nature-based solution project or not. So these are, a lot of these do make sense why we have not made progress since the first cycle was recently completed and we're in the beginning of the second cycle, and we are still waiting for funding to come about from our region, from the recent FIF competition. So we have added to the slides theoretical percentage of goal that could be met if every single FMX in our plan was funded. This is where it would get us on the goal. And so some of them you can see theoretically, if every major roadway was of FMX's was funded, we would be at about 45% of our goal for the second goal on the list, the reduce miles of major roadways subject to inundation during the 100-year event. And so again, this goes back to our conversation about with this cycle, we may need to clarify some of the language or intent of the goal now that we do have more clarity on the FMXs in our plan and what can be accomplished from cycle to cycle. And so I did want to again open the floor to any other additional comments or conversation on these last goals.
And part of your problem too is just being able to get data. Some of these things happen.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and there are institutions like is doing some great work here. And those are very interesting, like all these things. So this incorporated actions by those entities to the extent that they used to.
Yes, and it is, we are still reaching out to entities and making updates to our plan based on what's happened since the previous cycle. And so that is, of course, a long process with 93 cities and counties and then the other river authorities and things like that. So on that outreach and communication with sponsors on where they're at, what their needs are, where we're going, those types of questions.
Some, like, I know 2 months are lifting up for redoing their whole waste plans, getting them above Act 14, you know, you have to ask that question to them, but you can find out they did it, and they're doing that outside.
And they'd have to be incentivized to give us the information and participate in the plan when they're not necessarily getting something out of it for providing that information.
HGC has a great awards program and you know, these awards. Skip over HGC completely.
And just to clarify, I mean, these are including the projects in the plan, but that doesn't actually mean anything's happening to those projects. So, I mean, the goal is to first get it in the plan. We might consider, you know, the goal of actually implementing the project. I mean, that's what's really going to make the difference. So.
Agreed. Thank you, Lisa. To go to the last slide on 3C, I did just want to show our survey results currently from our website. We asked the public as well as stakeholders for what are the 3 major goals that they have for our plan currently. And these were the responses. And you can see we have folded the top 3 for each. And we will be, again, asking for feedback between now and the September meeting from the RPG on any thoughts on these goals and how we can improve them, how we can add to them and refine them. So please be on the lookout for follow up on this.
All right, we're in the home stretch, y'all. There's only a couple slides left, but Augie, you had a really good segue actually into Task 4C about reaching out to stakeholders and figuring out what they've been able to implement themselves, because folks aren't standing still while the planning group is building out this plan. So if you'll skip to the next thing. Yeah, perfect. So if y'all will recall, Task 4C is the technical task this phase Water Development Board has provided us with additional scope and budget to actually perform FMEs and studies to identify FMPs to recommend in the plan this cycle. So in the May Regional Flood Planning Group meeting, the Regional Flood Planning Group approved a prioritized list of FMEs that we could then use to start out reaching out to sponsors to verify that we've accurately represented that study and the level of effort associated and collect any data that we would need, and also confirm that they were still interested in us performing that FME. And so what we found, like we were kind of alluding to, Augie, is that these folks are very interested in these projects, and lots of local communities have continued to make investments and perform these studies, implement these projects, secure funding, and start to construct them, which is very positive. I know one of the particular criteria that the technical committee was concerned with when we were developing this prioritization was making sure that we were elevating projects that communities were interested in pursuing funding and implementing in a timely manner. We didn't want to elevate projects that a community really wasn't interested in pursuing. And so turns out that proxy was right. Folks were very interested in these projects and they've elevated them themselves. So we've been able to collect a lot of really great information that we can use to refine our plan. But we're still in the process of contacting sponsors. So as an update, we've reached out to 18 individual sponsors. We've set up one-on-ones with them to collect additional information. Where they've identified that they've already performed FMEs, we've been able to have conversations about how we can accurately represent their evolved needs this cycle. So it's been a really positive pursuit. So we've identified 8 FMEs that sponsors have confirmed interest in us performing from 6 unique sponsors, although I did just see an email come in, I think from Gary this morning. So there might be some additional information from Harris County Flood Control we need to factor in. But we've identified 56 FMEs that have already been advanced by the sponsor or are no longer in need of that FME. 49 FMEs are pending sponsor feedback, so we're still actively coordinating with these folks. And then we plan to reach out to an additional 12 entities. So you'll move to the next slide, Tim. Yeah, coordination is ongoing, but wanted to clarify that the process we laid out back in May was that we would have this prioritized list and begin reaching out to sponsors to collect additional information. And then we would return to the Regional Flood Planning Group with that refined list and recommendations for what FMEs to perform before we actually got started on work. So we will wait for Regional Flood Planning Group approval of the list of FMEs before we begin studying them. The sponsors have already performed a lot of FMEs. We've been able to incorporate those changes since the last cycle, anticipating hopefully some additional FME confirmations as a result of ongoing coordination. But currently, with the 8 that have been identified, it's looking, Can y'all hear me?
Now we can. You cut out for a second.
Okay. With the 8 FMEs that sponsors have currently confirmed they are interested in the Regional Flood Planning Group elevating to FMPs, we're only accounting for roughly half of the total budget for Task Force C currently. So as we reach out to those remaining sponsors on our prioritized list and confirm whether or not there are FMEs that they're interested in performing, if we have not exhausted our full Task Force C budget, we'll be coming back to the technical committee to discuss how to allocate that remaining budget. Want to clarify that we are ahead of schedule on Task Force C. I know this outreach maybe has taken occurred over several RPG meetings, but we went ahead and made the decision to get started on Task Force C coordination early in the process so that we could have this one-on-one discussion and give ourselves The regional. We lose you again?
Yeah, you cut out, you seem to be back again.
All right. Well, that sums up our update for Task Force C. But is there any questions on Task Force C?
Slide, you had 9 projects on there.
Oh. 8, not 9.
Yeah, I think we'll have to check. It's a ongoing discussion with sponsors. So I think this past week we had an additional one that was added and we must have missed that.
We must have missed.
Oh, cool. That's, but it needs to position to be in. So you'll have, you know, not in 5 days on that list.
Yes, we've got 12 sponsors that we're reaching out to, and they've got several FMEs each recommended on that list.
So, so I guess the question is, if it goes like it's gone, in anticipations, you will be inside the budget.
Remains to be seen. I think we still need to hear back from these other sponsors.
I mean, are they all like in that same level? I know that there's some projects we had listed like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most of them are this in that range still.
Okay. The intent of that prioritized list, it didn't prioritize all FMEs recommended in the plan. There was a focus, and part of that prioritization was on lower budget, those low hanging fruit FMEs that just needed a BCR or maybe had been recommended a few years ago and so need to be updated and optimized with Atlas 14 modeling. So the intent there was to focus on kind of those lower effort FMEs to maximize the number of FMPs to be elevated this cycle. It was also in line with the proxy of wanted to pursue projects that communities had already made significant investment in and studied and were interested in. But we're finding that they continued to make progress and were able to secure funding. All right. So the first deliverable that we are working towards, and that many of these tasks we talked about today feed into, is the technical memorandum, which is due to the Water Development Board January 7th of next year. So we're anticipating a checklist which will provide very specific requirements for that ahead of this September technical consultants call. Nick, please jump in if I'm incorrect there. But we'll be looking to put this information in front of the Regional Flood Planning Group over the next several meetings at the September Regional Flood Planning Group, in front of technical and public engagement committees in October, and then eventually in front of the Regional Flood Planning Group for approval in November ahead of submittal in January.
Sorry about that. I have somebody do construction right next to my window. Could you repeat that?
Water Development Board will be providing a checklist for the tech memo within the next month.
That is the goal. We will have the tech memo checklist. We'll be walking through it in the tech conference call. I don't know when we will be having it published. The goal is to get it out ASAP. It is currently being routed currently, but I unfortunately don't have a date for you. But yes, it will be due. It will be to you before hopefully October. That is the goal.
It's a month before November.
Yeah. So hopefully sooner. If we can go to the next slide, it should be our last slide. Yeah, so this is just recap for Regional Flood Planning Group meetings and our understanding of schedule for Regional Flood Planning Group meetings and anticipated committee meetings. So in September, we'll be looking to the group to take action on adopting goals and recommending minimum standards. We'll also, as Tanner mentioned, be reaching out after this meeting to provide some homework or initial drafts to collect feedback from the regional flood planning group ahead of that meeting, so we have a productive discussion. In September or October, there will be a need to have a subsequent technical committee meeting to present final results of the task 2A and task 2B efforts, including exposure analysis. Look to receive input on the needs analysis and then begin discussions on prioritizing a list of FMEs for the Water Development Board to perform. That's a subsequent deliverable in next spring. We'll be meeting again with the Public Engagement Committee to continue discussions on the first public meeting series, tentatively scheduled for the first quarter of 2026, hopefully after MapNext has been published. And then in November, we'll be looking to receive approval of the technical memorandum from the Regional Flood Planning Group ahead of submittal in January. It'll also be a great opportunity to discuss the potential to leverage our public meeting series to provide FIF technical assistance ahead of the fiscal year 2026-2027 call for applications.
Thank you, Megan. That segues us well into item 12, agenda items for next meeting. Timothy or Jonathan, is our September meeting going to be the 6th or the 6th or the 11th? It will be 6th or 13th. 6th or 13th. Which is it? I mean, y'all have a conflict with council, I mean, with commissioners boards. We can do 11. The 6th is a Thursday. No, it's the 4th and 11th. 4th. Yes, sir. Yeah. 4th and 11th. I mean, I don't even remember. We used to meet first. Does that still work for everyone? First Thursday?
It's September 4th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like y'all, I'm planning to visit with Erwin, and sure like to see if we can do it at United Ways. On other agenda items, since we'll be meeting in September, we will be unable to act on the vacancy announcement of the coastal communities just from a timing standpoint. But I will ask the plan sponsor to prepare the vacancy announcement for the coastal community position. And would encourage any member who knows of someone who we feel would be valuable to bring their stakeholder world to us, the coastal communities, to share that information, myself and the plan sponsor. And then we'll have our standard agenda items. Unless something else comes up, we need action on technical committee, or public committee, or this technical.
Tim, can I propose one additional agenda item? I'd really like it if we talked about meeting location and format, because I think that we really are experiencing a challenge, not only around location, we've been bouncing around, but also with respect to format. And so, you know, I think that everybody experienced a great deal of frustration in today's hybrid meeting. And I would observe that as the number of attendees in person increases, you know, the sound quality from those who are not immediately by a microphone is really difficult to hear. And so if we were to continue, you know, a true hybrid meeting with a good number of attendees in person, I really think we would need an environment where we have microphones for all of the members. And that really hasn't been available in the kinds of venues that we have been using. And so I think we're at a point right now where for us to engage productively, and for the video conference format that we have been using to actually be beneficial, both for the members and for the public, I think we need to make some choices that would result in better sound quality.
Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the agenda? Hearing none, any additional public comments from the general public in attendance?
This is Michael Roberts with nonprofit. It's with us. Yep.
Thank you for attending. With that, we'll move on to item 14. It's 11:09 a.m. I'll thank you for your attendance and patience today.